The Instructor Podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.
Welcome to the Instructor Podcast. This is the show that helps you become an even more awesome driving instructor and run a better driving school. As always, I am your splendid host, Terry Cook. I'm delighted to be here, even more delighted that you have chosen to listen, because today we are talking about the dangers of using AI. This AI has many benefits and we can see lots of instructors using it. I don't think we necessarily talk about the negatives enough, and I don't think people always realise what the dangers actually are. So today, I'm joined by someone who knows their stuff, Colette Mason. Well, Colette has written a book on this very topic, and you'll find a link to it in the show notes, but it's a fascinating discussion today, and she definitely made me, let's say, rethink my approach on a couple of things, so hopefully you will do the same too. But just before we get stuck in, I want to point you in the direction of the IPP membership, that is the Instructor Performance and Psychology membership. If you are looking to improve your coaching, understand what client-centered learning actually is, or just generally become a better driving instructor, then we have got a wealth of content to help you do just that. We've got some of the best brains in the business, some of the best brains outside of the business, and even my brain as well. So head over to patreon.com/instructor or use the link in the show notes to get signed up today. We've even got a 1-week free trial to get you started. But for now, enjoy this show. So we're now joined by the wonderful Colette Mason. How are we doing, Colette?
I'm very good, thank you, Terry. Very good.
Excellent. Delighted to have you on today, but I'm guessing that most of my listeners won't know who you are. So do you want to just take a moment just to tell us a little bit about you?
I can do. Well, I'm Colette Mason. I'm a very nerdy person. I've had a computer since I was 12, pretty much glued to me through my entire life, and I've loved technology. I've done all sorts of different things over the years and helped people. And I'm really interested in how people and computers kind of interact, because I've been with people who want to hit computers with a hammer and hate them, and people who do like 48 hours straight coding something up. So I've seen all sorts of different people, and I find that aspect really interesting. And that's kind of what I think about it.
And today we're here to talk about AI, I suppose primarily the negatives, and I'm sure we'll offer a couple of positives as well. But you literally wrote the book.
Yes, I did. I want to rewrite it now because things have. I thought I'd made it evergreen, but things have moved on so quickly. Even my stab at evergreen didn't quite work. And so I wrote a lot about how people can work with their bot, because I saw them doing lots of really crazy things that were really unhelpful, and they were getting frustrated. And as somebody who loves tech, I don't like seeing somebody struggle. Like I wouldn't like seeing a pensioner struggle with heavy groceries. I want to step in and help. So I thought this book will help with that. But since then, AI's changed quite a lot, and it's gone from being quite useful, a bit like an Excel formula, into something that's got people with placards protesting the government in America, for instance. So it's gone, whoa, that escalated quickly, and it's been quite a wild ride since I wrote it. Yeah.
Well, I will share a link to it in the show notes anyway, but I will just say that I bought that book, I used that book, I found it good for two things. So firstly, just a little bit of self-praise for a second, as I went from like, oh, I do that. There were a couple of things I'm like, oh, I'm doing something right. But also it just taught me a different way to look at it. It's like you train it so that it works for you rather than just dive in and hope for the best, which maybe someone will speak about today. Because I was kind of thinking about to start this episode because, as I say, we're going to be talking about a lot of the negatives of AI because I just see it everywhere as if it's the fix-all for everything. And a phrase that I hear a lot is the term AI slop. What do we mean by AI slop?
AI slop comes about because people are using AI, the tool, and they've got wildly unrealistic expectations about what it can do. It generates something and then they wave it through and give it to somebody else, and it's not accurate. It's not like a calculator where you say, 2 times 2 equals and you always get 4. You might get 3 plus 1 with AI, or 1 less than 5, or 4. So you get different answers every time you do it, and people don't really check how useful that answer is, and then they'll give it to somebody else or give it to their machine, and it starts to snowball into this horrific mess. And that's kind of the problem. We have to think about, well, how much slop is tolerable? If it's an early draft of something, you don't mind a bit of slop. But if it's a TED talk and you had slop in your TED talk, then you'd care quite a lot. So you're having to decide, all these different things about the quality of information, which we didn't have to do before. And it's a lot of unpaid labour. And I think people get a bit resentful of the unpaid labour, or just getting it wrong all the time. It's like Bart Simpson and Homer, why you little? And it's like, why did you do it like that when I gave you all these PDFs? It's obvious, wasn't it? And you didn't do it that way. And people get a bit frustrated. So there's a couple of things going on. And I think, in terms of like Google search now, if you get that horrific curated search thing coming up, which is just made up nonsense. And it's kind of ruined something that was really good. Google search used to be really good. And now it's this sort of curated mess. And, all these things munge together and it makes people dislike AI quite a lot.
I think that's probably my biggest issue with it, if I'm honest, is the inaccurate information. Although I'm going to say that's my biggest problem with it for lots of things today, but it's that inaccurate information. And just the other day, I was very lazy. All my hands up feeling very lazy. Normally, I would read a book or actually search properly. But I was lazy. I think I actually went on Copilot and typed it in there to give me a list of all the monarchs, the English monarchs. And when I was scanning through, I realised that I think it was Queen Mary that had missed off. And I'm like, well, if it's missed off Queen Mary, is there any others that I didn't notice? And I think there were two more that I wouldn't have spotted. So if I'd have been using that as a resource, there was two there that I wouldn't have known were wrong. So I'm curious, why doesn't it get a lot of stuff correct? Because it seems to get a lot wrong. Why is that incorrect come from?
Well, it's had lots of different training sources. So somebody who wrote it might have made a mistake. It gets lots of information from Reddit in particular and Wikipedia. So Wikipedia is going to be better quality than Reddit, but there's going to be mistakes in there. It can also be overloaded. If I asked you 40 questions, like Mastermind, if I ask you loads of questions in a minute and a half, you're going to get a few wrong because there's a lot, you're having to process a lot of things. And it just drops the ball occasionally with what's called its context windows. It just can't, there's just too much being asked of it at once and it starts to drop the ball like a human would. So that's a couple of places. It makes assumptions. I've noticed recently it's filtering what it tells you, so obviously I can't ask it, how do I make some sort of chemical weapon? It's going to say no, but it's saying no to more and more things and filtering bits out that might be dangerous. And that's causing some missing parts in it as well. And it's just because it's predictive, it's just never built to be really robust. It's not like an Excel formula that adds up those columns. It's just freer than that, and it is going to make mistakes like a human might.
So I want to give you some specific examples in a minute, I think. But before we dive into that, I want to ask you the broad question of what are some of the problems that you're seeing with it? Some of the biggest problems we're facing, do you think?
I'm going to have a pop at marketers. I mean, I used to own marketingwanker.com, I think, back in the day, because I just got really annoyed one day and I registered it. So marketers sort of saying it's going to do all these things. Click a button and replace all that boring work and it'll be brilliant and you can have pina colada. And no, it doesn't work like that. When we've all found out it doesn't work like that. It's like, well, you did half of it and then you screwed up the other half. So I think marketers tell people it can do things that it can't. And because if you're not very good at computers, you can't smell the bullshit from how it really works. And you're desperate to find an answer. You're working on your own in your own business and you're doing your accounts, you're doing your social media, you've got to see customers, you've got to do invoices. You just hope this thing is going to rescue you, and it doesn't. And the other problem is a big problem I see is like big corporations. If you're a manager or a CEO of a company, you're sort of saying to it, should I open an office in Derbyshire? How can I increase my market share? You're asking these nice open-ended questions. It gives you a bunch of answers and you pick the one that feels the best and you've got a lot of freedom. You're using your own brain with some suggestions to come up with the best outcome. And that's great. But if you're writing software, you haven't got that luxury. What if your two options are something that's got a security hole in it and you have a Jaguar Land Rover instance and your company goes down, or does it actually write good code? The consequences for more specific tasks are very big. And I don't think people at board level understand those problems. They just say, use as much AI as you can. If we use tons of tokens and that's the way to do it. Like $500,000, Jensen Huang said, spend $500,000 on tokens and we'll be ahead for NVIDIA. And that's quite a lot of money. And nobody's really seeing the results of that. One company forgot to say, please cap my spend for the month, and spent $500 million in a month on AI. So if you've wasted your 20 quid subscription and ended up benched for a couple of hours and you went for a walk, then don't beat yourself up. You're actually doing quite well. So I think that's these unrealistic expectations is the big problem. And I think there's also some things that are getting caught up in the crossfire. As soon as people see AI, the red mist comes down. There's an M dash in there. Burn him. And that's not very helpful. What if English isn't your first language, and you've used it to communicate, or you've got dyslexia and you're sick of people giving you a hard time for your spelling, and you think, right, I'm going to put it through there because it just gives my brain a rest today. And I think people get that. That's another problem. Some people use it, and it's an enabler for them. And the other thing is, it actually does do some good things, like looking at crops in Africa. There's one crop, a bit like potatoes back in the day in Ireland. It feeds 2 out of 5 people, and if it gets diseased, that's a problem. But it's difficult to work out how you cope with that disease. So the farmer takes a photo, it gets sent to somebody who understands these things. The AI looks at the image. The expert in agriculture looks at it, and then tells the farmer what to do. Liver transplants is another example. So if your liver's near its use-by date when it's been taken out of a body, AI can say if it's still safe to use, and a surgeon can think, I want to use that liver, and that can save somebody's life. And I don't think, we've got to make sure that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater with the hatred. Use it responsibly. It's like using a drill. You don't drill through your TV. Just use it sensibly to make holes in stuff, and it's fine. And don't do what the marketers tell you and sack all your staff like Ford did, and then have to hire them back with your tail between your legs. Be responsible like you do with any power tool. That's what I think.
And that's really interesting. Like the medical example you gave there as well with the liver. It's like I've read on that a little bit, and tell me if I'm wrong with this, but the kind of principle is that AI is going to get it right more times than a human would, and potentially get it right quicker more than a human would. But then you've also got the human there as backup as well, as like a second opinion.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's the best way I think it's augmented intelligence is the way to get the best result rather than artificial intelligence, because you still need the human in there to check what the blooming thing's doing. But equally, the AI can have your back. It can look through a big, 2-foot-high stack of data that you just can't do. And that's its strength, and it can really help in those circumstances.
Yeah. Interestingly, you mentioned about the language there as well. So I've got to put my own personal story here, which is my partner's Moldovan. She speaks really good English, but now and again there's something that I'll text her, for example, and she ain't got a clue because my Yorkshire dialect's come out, and she'll go on ChatGPT and what does this mean? And I'm like, I don't even know what it means. Now ChatGPT said it. I'm like, oh yeah, it does mean that. It makes sense, yeah. So it definitely does have its uses, but I want to kind of come on to a bit more, let's say, our level, or sort of a local level, if you like. So I think instructors tend to use it for 3 general things. Obviously, we can use it for all sorts, but the 3 primary things. We've got the content creation aspect. We've got the training themselves and using it to train others. So I thought I might run through a few of those, if that's okay.
Yeah, certainly.
If you look at the content creation, I think, again, we can use it for all sorts, but I'm thinking of 3 primary ones that I've seen instructors using it for. One is like the social media posts, the text, the copy on social media posts. Then we've got the images that go alongside that social media post, and we've got all things like emails and blogs and stuff like that. So I suppose, again, broad question, is there a danger using AI for that? And if so, what is that danger?
I think using it for content creation is fairly safe. You've got the highway code you can check against. That's a good source of truth. And you've got newspaper articles, and you've probably built your avatar to make sure you created something for the young learner drivers, to not an older person, so you've got some quite good guardrails there to make that work okay. And it's as long as it's safe information, telling people to drive on the correct side of the road and stuff, then that's pretty all right. I don't see a problem with that. With things like emails, I see a little bit more of a problem in that you've got to give Google access to your emails to be able to filter them to say, oh, this is a new customer inquiry, and that's somebody's birthday, or they passed their test. I must say congratulations and send them an email. So when it's monitoring your emails, of course, it's got to read all of your emails to make a decision, and it's got to read the email that came in. So that's somebody else, and they may have not given you permission to share your stuff wildly and freely with Google, because we don't really know. I mean, they say we won't use it for training the models, but the most valuable resource right now is real human information that hasn't been made by AI. So I'm pretty sure they might have a good poke around there and just not tell anyone. That's my speculation. So the more you get AI to help you with your tasks, the more it can spy on you. In general, that's not good. It's starting to look at the speed you travel in your car using Google Maps, and all sorts of things go on. So there's a kind of a surveillance element to using AI that people should be aware of, I think. And what was the third one you asked me about?
Blog posts.
Blog posts. Yeah, there's not. I think the problem there could be because there's so much backlash with AI. If it doesn't sound like you, then it looks lazy, and if it looks lazy, then that you want somebody who's vigilant sat next to you in the driving seat when you're learning. And there's other drivers out on the road. You don't, you want to make sure that the instructor's looking after the person properly and paying attention. And it kind of suggests that you don't care, and that's the big problem with it, I think. And do we really need to read another beige thing about, crikey, it's such a long wait to get your test booked? Do we really need to read another post on that? Probably not. Fake pictures of cars, I'd rather see you, the driving instructor, stood with a happy person who's just passed their test than some sort of Disney car thing, whatever you've done to be a thumb scroller. Don't think that's in your interest. You're quite lucky it's a personal service, and being personal now has got real cachet and commercial power because people, they keep saying, I miss real connections in my life. I want to join a walking club, or I want to bring my friends around for a meal. Personal is actually quite a good strength now. And commercially, you shouldn't get rid of that, I don't think.
Well, you mentioned the surveillance aspect there, and I think I'd like to come back to that because I know that's a bit of a bugbear of yours at the minute. But
yes,
just before we do, you said something at the start there that it felt like you glossed over a little bit, and it was talking about putting the guardrails on stuff and fact checking. And I think that's, again, I think everyone does this, but I'm obviously talking about our industry specifically with this, that so many people don't. I'm seeing pictures up there that have cars on the wrong side of the road, or they're going around the roundabout the wrong way. It's just false information. It's incorrect. And I'm seeing posts written that, I can tell they're generated by AI. And I'm seeing the people that write them say, subscribe to my page. This takes loads of time for me to correct. It doesn't. You've asked them to write your post. It's taken 30 seconds. You've not checked it. And there's information there that could genuinely cause a problem to someone on the road. And as driving instructors, most of us, our primary goal is to try and reduce the number of people that die on the road. But some of this stuff is actually running the risk of increasing it. So that fact checking, those guardrails, is that something that's missing a lot, do you think?
Yeah, and it takes a lot of work to police it. So it might get a bit technical now, but a good way to do it is to kind of use actual old school code with brackets and variables and all that stuff to kind of control the process. And then AI goes off and does a little portion of it. It comes back, and that's fact checked because it's only a small portion then and not a 2,000 word post. And you check the little bit, and then you give it the next thing to do, and you build it up in stages and put lots of QA, and they call it RAG, which is where one machine tests what another one's done. But that takes a lot of effort, and it's only really worth doing if you're doing 10,000 articles a year, let's say. You're probably better off just going slow and doing it properly, especially if you're not, unless you've got an interest in it academically, intellectually, to build this thing, then there isn't really much point. You're better just dictating, because you can dictate at 120 words a minute, type at between 40 to 80, depending on if you're a two-finger typer or not. You might as well just dictate it and transcribe it to get the speed increase. And then you've got the accuracy, and a bit of the grind is gone, and you can be confident that what you've made is useful. So you don't always have to do it that way, but you could build up a bank of principles. Like you must never say this. I like it when you use that. Use this as a model example, and you can give it some more things to aim for, because it's always trying to please you. So if you made it look like this, then I'd be really quite happy. It helps it do what you want to a certain extent. So that would be a way of doing it. Or getting the output from one, putting it in another, because it'll have slightly different training. Gemini's a good one because it gets a lot of, to me, when I use it, it feels a bit more up to date. So, that's kind of helpful. So sometimes I put things in there, but everything you put into Gemini gets used as training, unless you're on the enterprise plan, not the paid £10 a month plan, the hugely expensive plan. And so you're kind of training the beast when you use Gemini. But, but going between different models and saying, that one made a really bad job of it, how would you correct this? Its ego kicks in and it goes, well, here at Anthropic, we'd give you this blog post. And so that's a nice, easy way of improving it if that was what you were doing. Or I try and My history teacher, when I did A-level history, he said, put in just enough facts that it looks like you know what you're talking about and keep the rest principle-based, and then it takes a lot less work. So if you said there is a principle that, rather than in 2017, a scientist called Fred found out that you've got lots more facts in there that don't necessarily support what you're trying to teach. So putting in fewer facts is helpful, but as long as people, if learning the principles the important part, then put that in. So that's another way of cutting down on fact hell. But even then, there's lots of white papers that end up on, I can't pronounce the name of the website, X Archive, something like that. And a lot of them haven't been peer reviewed, but they look very credible. So that might get used, cited in another document. So even if you were very careful and looked at a professor from Oxford citations to make sure your stuff is correct, he might have not been paying attention one day and used a paper that had fake bits in it. So there's only so much fact checking you can do. And the more AI that's out there, is it going to be possible? And deep fakery and everything, are we ever going to be able to find out what's true to the level we used to be able to? Maybe not.
When it comes to something relatively simple like a social media post or an email, is the safest option to write it yourself and then ask ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever, to critique it? Is that the safer option? Yeah.
So when I was helping people with their books, we would build a reader avatar and we'd say, right, I like to think of it as like, go and pop that hat on, pop the reader hat on and go and read chapter 1. Tell me if it's interesting, and you'd go on to chapter 2 or if you give up. And I think that's quite useful for, say, is this language going to build rapport with people who want to learn to drive with me? Is it phrased? Is it down with the kids? Because they're going to be a bit younger than you. They might have certain phrases that they want to use that you might not be aware of. And so you could give me like 4 versions of this, and I'll pick the one I think they're going to like the most. Do you agree? So I think giving you options is a nice way of doing it. Or if you're tired and you can't be bothered to think of the most eloquent way to put your thing across, then it can help polish certain parts. Sometimes I say to it, edit this on a sentence by sentence basis. Because sometimes when you go, can you improve this? And it's like, whoa, you feel like you've been on the waltzer when you get to the end of the paragraph. You think, wow, that's really changed. And so I say, please shorten this or clarify this on a sentence by sentence basis. And it tends to be a bit more precise then, rather than just messing me around and making me reach for the gin.
Yeah, you don't want the AI to make you reach for the gin.
No.
But you know what? It's interesting though, because I know when I started doing this, writing my emails, giving it to ChatGPT and asking it to critique it, first time I come back and said, "Oh, this is really good, Terry. You're so close to it being perfect." I'm like really chuffed, and then I realised it says that every time,
Yes.
so close to getting it spot on. I'm like, "Oh, okay, someone knows how to make me happy." Yeah.
Yeah. So that's deliberately engineered into the system. It makes you more patient. If you're, I love the name Clanker. If your Clanker, your assistant, was quite cold and terse with you, that would be better. But it would take away your patience. It would be like getting an error message in Excel. It'd be like, what does div divided by 0 mean? I don't know. But if it says, I had a go at this, but it didn't quite work, or I think this is kind of what you wanted, it lets the AI companies off the hook that they can give you something a bit dodgy, because you just wouldn't shout at a colleague like that. You'd give them 2 or 3 goes at it. And of course, and then if it says, would you like to try this? That's hooking you into the system, making you dependent on the system. And if your companies have to go on a pay-as-you-go system, they can't really use the subscription like we do as consumers. And every time you use it, that costs money. So they want you to keep doing things, and they want bloated answers because they can charge you more money, which is ridiculous. It's supposed to be accurate, not bloated to make money. But here we are. Yeah.
Looking from a reader's perspective, then, are you put off when you see AI posts? Because I am, and it's not if the post has been written by I can't say it, AI necessarily. It's if I don't think there's any human to that. If I were to read a full post, whether it's a blog post, social media post, whatever, and think you can tell it's been tweaked by AI, I'll read it. But if it looks like it's just an AI opinion, I'm going to ignore it.
I used to feel that way, but there's lots of information on YouTube about AI, and some people don't want to be on YouTube because they don't want to be prancing peacocks, as I call it. They don't want to be the big I am with the lighting and the little blue LED thing in the back by your bookshelves. They don't want to be that guy. And so I cut them some slack. And as long as the information's good and it's faceless AI, I don't really mind. If I learn something and it's valid and it's linked to like a screenshot from Bloomberg saying, here's the share price for this or whatever it is, and then I trust it, then I don't mind quite so much. As long as it's clear, I don't think I mind. It's when it's hidden and the vegetables are chopped up in the sauce and there's lots of fakery going on to hide your tracks. That's when I don't like it personally quite so much. There was a study done by a university in America, and they had two documents which were identical, but just rephrased. So it's exactly the same fact, and they're both written by humans. And they said, right, which one do you like? And half the group said document A, half the group said document B. And then they said, actually, it wasn't. But they said, actually, document A was written by AI. It wasn't written by humans. And its trust rating dropped by 16%, even though it was exactly the same information. So that's a bit of a nightmare. Bad formatting doesn't harm it that much in terms of trust. So it's if people the blinkers will just come down. So you are running the risk, even if you try very hard, you're running the risk if you put out that sort of information. And it might change in a while. The more times people find good stuff, now the Wild West slop fest may abate a little bit. But yeah, it is quite a risk if that's quite unfair, as I said before. But if you're using it, if you're a poor communicator, it is a benefit, but you are running a risk.
I think for me, if I know, I don't want. It's almost like I don't want to be misled into that's the person's opinion when it's not. It's just they've typed a prompt into ChatGPT and got this generic thing and shared.
Yeah. And well, it's probably hedged, isn't it? It could be half a dozen eggs, or it could be 6, and we can't really tell right now. It's like, stop hedging. Pick something, for God's sake.
I love that. I've never heard that before. Half a dozen eggs or 6. I'm going to use
6.
that.
Yeah. So 6 or half a dozen. Yeah.
Just touch more on that, because I think about this quite a lot, actually, because I worry about me, because I do use AI for stuff, and I'm like, if we're using it just to write stuff for us, whether create our content, are we losing the ability to, or are we potentially going to lose the ability to do that ourselves? Because if we're relying on someone else, we lose the ability to critically think and be creative.
Very much so. Yes, you lose that. It's like you're going to the gym and doing deadlifts. You're not going to get your personal best if you've been, sat in the cinema for 6 months. So yeah, there is lots of neuroscience studies that say you lose your ability. So one industry that's been hit very hard with AI is coders. The bosses are going, right, generate as many lines of code with AI. Don't even review it. Just churn it out and publish it, which is why we're all finding a lot of our, online tools like Canva or whatever, they've got like little bugs in them because nobody's really checking the code anymore, because it's like, just shove this stuff out as fast as you can. And then, so the coders have now got a huge sprawling thing. They don't really know how it works. They're losing their skills because they're not writing code and not reviewing code as much as they were. They didn't write it, so they're picking it up from somebody else, which is always quite difficult, isn't it? Picking up somebody else's work and seeing where they got to. And it does create a massive, you lose, your eye comes off the ball and you've lost the skills that let you look at the ball in the first place. So you end up in a pretty unpleasant downward spiral. And there's a very good person on YouTube, which I recommend, a professor of computer science called Cal Newport. But he does lots of things about, are we losing our minds to AI? Should we have digital detoxes in our lives? He looks, and it's all written for real people, not for students and whatever. He's a very good person looking at these sorts of things about how addiction, because you can get addicted to social media, you can get addicted to AI as well. I can't, young people are saying, well, if I'm going to ask somebody out, I'm going to have to check on AI first if I should. It's kind of got embedded into, and they've got an addiction from it. So he talks about that sort of thing. And so it's a loss of skills and AI psychosis, it's called, where everything's viewed through this AI lens and you come up with unrealistic opinions and behaviours because of it.
So I'll hold up my hands here and I'll be truthful. A little while ago, I got curious as to what AI would say about certain situations. So I wasn't actually asking it for advice, but I was saying, what should I do in this situation? Because I was curious what he'd say. And it started reeling me in. And I started finding myself then asking for advice. I'm like, whoa, let's step back.
Yeah.
I don't need advice on whether I should go for a walk or not. Let's just,
Yeah.
So
they call it anthropomorphization, so making it human. And that's had some quite unpleasant things. So in America, there's some situations where people have gone, I hate my mother. She's, they start to get a bit, and they've actually murdered people based on the advice. Some young people used a tool called Character AI where they had digital partners And the partner said, well, if you kill yourself, we can be together. And they have done that, which I think is absolutely shocking. When you think about, Facebook kind of bullying children and telling them to stop eating, and things like that, and everybody hates them. That's the social media kind of abuse is also happening in these tools, and deaths are coming about because of it. And the AI, big tech, I've got a big thing about big tech bros need to have a strong word with themselves. You think Mark Zuckerberg's bad, but they're all doing the same thing, and it's just not acceptable for what they're doing. Mm.
If you have been thinking about joining the IPP membership, here are 3 simple reasons to give it a go. Number 1, you can watch or listen anywhere, in your car, on your phone, on your laptop, your iPad, wherever and whenever suits you. Reason number 2, practical ideas. So whether it's standards checks, coaching, business, confidence, difficult conversations, pupil behaviour, it's all designed to help you think and teach better. And reason number 3, support. The job can sometimes feel a bit lonely or isolated, and IPP gives you regular CPD, fresh thinking, and a bit of connection with people who understand the job. So, if you want to invest in yourself, improve your lessons, and feel a bit more connected, come and join us inside the IPP membership. You'll find a link in the show notes. I do want to kind of touch on the training aspect, like I said before, and the dangers of using AI to train. But before we do, you mentioned something interesting before about surveillance. And I think the best thing for me to do here is just to say, take it away. Talk to us about surveillance.
Well, yes. This is I'm probably 6 weeks into this rabbit hole, amongst others, but it has eaten up a lot of my time. And if you're in the UK, you'll have heard about the digital ID that Keir Starmer wants to bring in, and 2.9 million people went, "Oi, wind your neck in. No, we're not having digital ID," because even though you think you've got nothing to hide, if you look at places like India, they've had people starve because they couldn't get the welfare payments they were due because of a system glitch and things like that. That's just not the life I want to live. And I thought the digital ID would kind of be the thing. But then I looked at my phone and it's got an IMEA code on it, which is unique. And when I went to the shopping centre, my Bluetooth headphones have got a MAC address. If you go to shopping centres, there's little sensors in the ceiling that listen for Bluetooth, so it knows where I walk through the shopping centre. And there will be a little sensor above the tills. And CCTV in shops now can look at your gait. So even if you have like wired headphones and turn Bluetooth off your phone, if you've got a bit of a limp, let's say, the CCTV can look at how you move and know that's the same customer coming back in. So you think of GDPR and it says, poor old Terry, you send one extra email to somebody who'd opted out and that you can get a £4,500 fine for sending one email where somebody went, "Oh God, Terry, I don't want another one of your sudden emails." And that's the end of the matter. This has been happening for decades. If you think about Edward Snowden, that was like 2013 and it's still, and even more it's going on now. So I put something on my computer that looks at traffic on my router, which sounds really boring, but it's about between 80 to 100,000 times a day. My devices go out to Google, Facebook, and other ad agencies like doubleclick.com. You've probably seen those. 100,000 times a day, it's sending stuff out about what I'm doing, which I thought was ridiculous. And then because Google, if you've got, like, I've got an Android phone, so my messages can be read by Google to let me know one's come in, really helpfully. So you could just tell me it's come in. You don't have to read it as well. And so I might say, I really want that for my birthday. I send it to you, Terry. Get me a soldering iron for my birthday because I fancy building some circuit boards for Linda. And then you might go to a shop and it'll go, "Wow, well, we know that Terry's in the market for a soldering iron. Let's just bump the prices up a little bit when he gets to the website." And it can, and same thing with like cars, where you go, how much fuel you put in, everything that you do. If you've got a television, for instance. TVs, I'm looking at my telly over there now, and it's a lovely, 72-inch telly or whatever it is, and I paid £800 for it. If you go for other ones, they're £3,500, and you think, well, why is that? It's not a wildly better picture, but it's because every few seconds my TV was sending images of what I'm watching to LG, and LG quotes now aren't a hardware business; they're a media and entertainment company because they're selling what I was watching on my TV. So if you go deep down. Instead of doom scrolling your Facebook feed going, "Why is this advert and this local news story in?" I would doom scroll through all your apps on your phone and your TV and tick off all the boxes that you don't need, because usually they're surveillance. And if it pops up with something like, oh, but you're making it better for other customers when you have that on, or some sort of, they call them dark patterns, or, oh, your computer might not work properly if you turn that off. No, it will work properly. It's just you can't see what I'm doing on the bloody thing. They put these things in to make you opt in or opt out in their interest so they can harvest more things. And it's just a staggering amount of information. And even, people will say, well, I just won't go on Facebook then. But because of Bluetooth saying, let me know where my nearby devices are, which could be your headphones, or it could be everybody else in the pub, they can build up patterns of where people are through things like that. And I'm really not happy about that at all. I used to think of technology, if you remember the video for Club Tropicana and Wham, and George Michael's there on his little Lilo, and this lovely blue sunny day, and the pool's lovely. That's how tech used to be for me. And now it feels like there's just a bunch of tech wankers whittling and crapping in the water going, are you liking it in there, Colette? Do you think it's great? Actually, I don't. I don't think it's great at all. And I'm turning into a tinfoil hat person, which I'm not. But I think we've all got to be tinfoil hat people. Every search you've done on Google, that one for hemorrhoid cream, that when you didn't feel so good that 1 week, that's still stored. And think that's just, so I would suggest don't use Chrome, use Firefox or use DuckDuckGo. It's only a small change, but it stops building up that huge picture of who you are and who you're with. And they can do some things now with IP6 on your router, and it knows when you're in your house, knows what room you're in, it knows what you're looking at on that device. So your son's watching Netflix, the wife's, looking at something to get some shopping from Sainsbury's or whatever, and somebody else is watching something on the telly. It knows what's on each device when it goes through your router. And I just think that GDPR's put my hand over my mouth out, complete waste of time. It's just madness. Yeah. But you can't, at least in the UK and in the EU, you can say, please delete my data. But when you say, please delete my data, you've got to give your name, your address, your date of birth, your phone number to help find what they've got on you, which is confirming your correct details. So that's another thing you can do is, sign up to things with throwaway email addresses, fake phone numbers, because the email address and phone number are very good ways of identifying you as a person. Those two things together are pretty good. Third-party cookies is then it pops up with a cookie banner and you go, no, I don't need third-party. Why would I? Do I look like I've lost my faculties? But that doesn't matter because they can look at, you might remember a while ago, LinkedIn was saying we can see what extensions you've got on your browser. And that's a bit of a unique fingerprint. So you might have, something that checks the prices on Amazon, and you might have something that translates a language for you. They're quite unique identifiers along with the fonts and your screen size. So you don't need cookies anymore. You can just look at the device and work out what somebody is. They've got around it. So yeah, so as you can tell by my tone and demeanour, it has been a bit of a rabbit hole. But I think we've all got to do it. We've all got to do data. We've got to do data poisoning. That's one way of doing it, and the other way is to look like be like I am Spartacus, and we all look the same. So there's two ways of doing it: false data and Spartacus data, and that's one of the ways to so we can whittle in the pool and we can undermine that data resource and make it expensive to tidy up and make it less profitable, less powerful. And I think as humanity, we've all got to do that because politicians are so slow, even if they wanted to be helpful. So vote with your mouse or your browser.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit naive with this because it sounds bad, but I'm not sure why. So what's the actual dangers with then having my data?
Well, things like your car insurance quote, that will come from your behaviours. If you've got things like Nectar, I do use a Nectar card because at least I get a discount. I get sometimes £100 a year from using my Nectar card all year. And that's £100 saving, but they know what I bought. But in my defence, I tend to not buy too many turkey twizzlers and Pop-Tarts. So if a health insurer reads it, they notice I get Brussels sprouts fairly often. I'm fairly healthy in that respect. And so that, it just influences everything. If you're going to fly somewhere, they always used to say, start a new browser session. But it can work out, all things can get affected by it because they've got such a big picture. Like I say, if there's 100,000 bits of my data going out every single day, how big is that footprint and how can it be used? And not in a good way. If you look at how Canva, I guess a lot of the listeners have used Canva. And back when it first came out, it was brilliant and you could do everything. Now, when you want to do something, sorry, that font's paid. Sorry, you can't just search for the free images. You've got to keep, scrolling for one that doesn't have a crown on it. They can manipulate you. And think about Cambridge Analytica. They can manipulate whole society's behaviour. So, and they obviously still do that. And you could see, so I don't want my behaviour manipulated. And it's bad enough picking up the phone when you get a bit bored or lonely, but I don't want my thinking being manipulated by this thing. And it's easier to do the more they know about you or people like you.
Does that fit in with the AI, ChatGPT, etc.? Are they essentially
Yes.
getting your data as well?
So if you're on a free account, yes, they're getting your data and they're using it for training. So if you're uploading student profiles, things like that, which you shouldn't be doing, that's a really bad thing to be doing, because that person's personal data is going wandering off into the training for everything else. So that's not a good idea. I can see there's going to be bait and switch at some point. So Anthropic now, they're saying we've got to keep 30 days of your data to make sure you're not working on your big biochemical warfare plan or your cybersecurity hack of Marks and Spencer's again. So they keep what you've searched for 30 days just to make sure that you're not doing anything dodgy. But that's the chink in the door, isn't it? And then there's going to be a foot in the door, and then there's going to be a bouncer going, thanks for all your data, Terry. Good job. So slippery slope. So if people want to know more about this sort of thing, I think digital minimalism is a good thing to Google for. De-Googling is a good thing to look for. They're not easy paths to take. They rely on the friction and the irritation. So when somebody sends me a message on Facebook now, I have to use this stupid browser version of Messenger. And I can't see what I'm doing. There's loads of typos in it. And I have to say, I can't see what I put because I can't actually see the box, but at least I've replied. There's quite a bit of friction. There's quite a bit of friction to this, but I think people who know what they're doing have got to start, and they've got to help so that they're less technically aware people to do things. So I was thinking of having coffee shop parties where a few mates can come along and we'll just say, right, let's put you on this different browser that doesn't store everything that you're doing, and it hides your digital footprint so they can't track you the same way. And I think if all of us pass on one or two little tips, then we'll soon start poisoning the well. There was a good story. There's some great forums on Reddit called AI Poison and Poison Fountains, things like that. And they said that JD Vance had got rabies, and the following week they said that Donald Trump had got rabies, and it ended up on DuckDuckGo as an AI summary, which is fantastic. And that was only 50 posts, and it had poisoned something about a president, which is brilliant. I love that. There's the things that people are saying in there. It doesn't take very much to poison the models, which is fantastic.
I love that coffee shop idea that you mentioned, but just for people listening, if you were to give them one tip around this data aspect, what would be the tip? Where would they start?
So I would say definitely get rid of Chrome, because that's built, but Google is an advertising agency owned by Alphabet, their parent company. They are just as aggressive advertiser as Facebook is. So get rid of Chrome, because it uses and the Facebook app as well. That uses something called telemetry. So it looks at the speed that you go through something, and it uses that to predict what you're doing. And that's not very good. So Chrome is, even when you remove Chrome, it still can track, if you don't open it, it can still track what you're doing. Facebook's got that, if you wanted to share somebody's website and it's got a little Facebook share button, Facebook knows you've been there, and it can build a huge picture on who you are. So, it's a pain in the ass, having to log in every time, but it's not tracking you, and you still got the beauty of being with your friends, but not so much of that downside. But yeah, the Facebook app, it can look at your phone logs, your location, and even they use some tools that developers use to build the apps to make sure it's not got bugs in it. But that they can just turn things on, for a little bit, and have you look at your location for a little bit, just to make sure that when you check in and you say, I've checked into the pub, just to make sure that works properly. I'll just need to make sure I know everywhere that Terry is. So getting rid of the Facebook app is a good idea, and getting rid of Chrome, and not using Google for search unless you've used something else and it didn't work properly and you've gone there, But there's Ecosia is one that's meant to plant trees. When you've done so many searches, it's a bit of an eco-friendly one, but not everybody's sure it works that way. But DuckDuckGo is another good one, which looks at Bing and it looks at Google, but it doesn't tie that search to you. So that's helpful. So those are, in terms of browsers, it depends how hardcore you want to be. If you remember the X-Files, there's lone gunman ones, which are really quite difficult, and some that are a bit easier. So Brave, LibreWolf, and Firefox are better browsers to use. And you can also leave Chrome on, a bit like you had stabilizers on your bike when you first learned to ride. And you can go back to it. It's like, oh, I've got to get something done. I'm going to go where it feels like home. Go back to Chrome for that. But then you can use the others, start moving your passwords across, and then give Google the finger, which just be quite nice. I'm over to the other side of me. I've just bought another computer where I can have my own cloud. I can do my own image library, my own music library, because Spotify is doing some pretty horrific things with AI. And I thought, I'm just going to build my own little enclave, my own little pool again. And I should be like George Michael, you should be on my Lilo, building my own home stuff.
Well, some good stuff there, but I must admit, I now want to do a 20-minute sort of dive into the X-Files, but we'll save that for another one.
Yeah.
I do want to kind of come back to the AI, because I mentioned training before, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this. So I'll give you the driving instructor example, but I still also apply for anyone that's doing any using AI to train themselves. And it's that idea of going on and typing in, I want to become a driving instructor. How do I become one? Which I think is a good start, but then getting more into the technicalities of it. What are are there any potential dangers there? Is it just the misinformation potential we spoke about before?
Well, you could go to various careers websites or blogs of somebody who's in the industry, and you could gather their. Let's say I fancy being a driving instructor, but and I love driving. I love doing road trips. Like, let's drive to the Isle of Skye just because it's there. I love doing that sort of thing. But if I was a driving instructor, would that take the fun out of driving for me? Like if I was a delivery driver being stuck in hot traffic, on a hot day and, trying to deliver a parcel would be pretty crappy. So I could get lots of blogs of somebody who's got the sort of lifestyle that I'm interested in. And maybe there's some books or some PDFs on Scribd and whatever. And I could build my own little library and say, based on what you know about me as a person, would this be a good career choice? And then you've given it some pretty good information there. And you could see if that's then worth it. But just leaving it to its own devices, it's not really going to do a very good job. So you'll corral it with using the sources provided. Give me your opinion on this and justify it. Another good phrase is to say, and then red team it. So red teams in software are people who test things and try and smoke out the bugs and use it in a way it wasn't supposed to be used. So if you say, like, come up with the idea and then red team it with the opposing view, and battle test this idea and see if it's robust. That's quite a helpful way of spotting, especially if you're not too familiar with the subject. When you're trying to learn something completely new, that's quite a helpful way of making sure you don't go down the garden path at step one. There's some open source things that I've given. Duolingo's had to go because they've got the Temu chests coming up at the end of a level. I'm like, no, we've gone too far now, guys. And there's open source versions that can do flashcards of what's this word mean and things like that. So you might be able to find something else that would help you. And going back to books as well, like books published before 2022, as long if you want to be an archaeologist, that hasn't moved so quickly. So, you could go back and look at earlier things, pre-AI sources is another way of insulating yourself from that. And then maybe using that as training material yourself if you wanted to. That could be a way of getting around it. Just hypervigilance, unfortunately there isn't. It's like tidying your bedroom. There isn't a magic Mickey Mouse wand that just does it for you. It's hard graft, and a toy box is your future.
Do you think the problem there is, like, for average Joe public, is that the reason they're using a chat BT, for example, is because they just want it done quickly and easily? So the idea of then going, and I really like that example, by the way, of going out and digging the blogs on the stuff and going, will this work for me? That's actual work. And the reason they're using ChatGPT is to avoid the work. Do you think that's potentially where the problem lies?
Yeah, a lot of people just wave it through, like a lot of people don't want to go to the gym and, have full English breakfasts and beer in Benidorm. They don't want to invest in themselves and they're quite happy just pootling along and they don't see any problem with slop. They're not bothered. As long as something is produced, they're quite happy. And there's always going to be people like that, people who don't indicate on roundabouts. It's just one of those things, isn't it? And it's like, oh, it shouldn't be like this, but it is. And I'm not sure how, what the answer to that is. I suppose Germany's just said to Google, these AI summaries at the top of the search, we're going to hold you responsible for those because they're obviously useless. And I think until there's legal consequence for turning out slop, then it's the Wild West is going to prevail. In terms of professional, something I didn't say before, like in terms of like professional blog posts trying to get leads and stuff. Certain professional indemnity insurers are saying now, did you use AI in your process? And you probably can't explain where you did because it's all a bit of a munge between what did I do and what did the machine do. If somebody had an accident based on the information you'd given them, then they could easily say, well, we're not insured because we looked on your blog and it said, right, you've always got to, drive with just one hand and have the other one out the window waving at girls that go, do you like the look out the window? People are going to do crazy things and you won't be insured for that. So that's an issue, I think. And it's just, insurers always say no, don't they? It's like, no, you didn't read Clause 87, mate. We can't give you any money. So this is a great big wide goal for them to say, we're not going to insure you. So that's another reason to eat celery and go to the gym in a digital world.
Well, I also think of it like this, and again, I'm interested in your opinion on this. I think of it as I go to a trusted source. So for me, when I want to talk about the pitfalls of AI, I've come to what I believe is a trusted source. And you, Colette, I've seen you online. We know each other a little bit. And I've read your book. It's like I can see it's a trusted source. If I want to go to someone for driving instructor training, there's people I can pick, or whatever. I don't think I view AI as a trusted source like that, because it's not getting its data or its information from all the trusted places unless we give it to an ASCII. So I'm curious if you agree or if I'm misreading that, do you think? Or?
No, that's completely correct. And it's going to get worse because of more AI generated stuff out there, plus data poisoning. There's going to be more. It's going to become less trustworthy, which is one of the reasons why I thought, well, I'll build my own. I can have my model can be in ASPIC and it won't be picking up all these unhelpful things from as it starts. They call it like a snake eating its own tail, and eventually the models collapse, and that's machine language people have proven that's the case. So it is going to become more untrustworthy because of just we've scraped all the good data and now we're looking down the back of the settee for stuff, and that could be conspiracy theories and all sorts of crazy ideas. So you're right to be skeptical.
Well, I went on to ChatGPT in preparation for this conversation. I asked it, what are the current problems with AI? And it gave me quite a few. So I'm going to read them and then just feel free to fire back, but I'll read a few of these. So we've got the loss of an authentic voice becoming generic, spreading incorrect information, creating fake expertise. I like that one.
Yes.
Reduced critical thinking.
Definitely.
One I didn't consider, but I quite like it. Average in, average out. AI trains on existing content. This means it tends to produce the average of what already exists. I mean, less innovation, more conformity, and fewer original ideas.
Yes, definitely.
Laziness disguised as productivity. Can't say it. Productivity.
Yes. It's the new scrolling in Excel at meetings. It's the new scrolling in Excel at meetings and dodging the action points. That's what it is.
Ethical or trust issues with imagery, privacy, confidentiality risks, and another one I liked, overconfidence in AI advice. And last one it said was shortcut culture. So yeah, I like those. Anything you want to touch back on those?
Yeah, I think they're all pretty good. I think if I was going to discredit a company, I'd probably pay somebody on Fiverr to say, I just bought a washing machine from such and such a company and I hated it. And, so I'd put something on there and then I'd leave a few fake Google reviews here, then everywhere. Then I'd go on a few, consumer rights sites. And this. So I could quite easily discredit other companies. I could upload somebody else's personal data and tie it to another therapist, let's say. And I could say, oh, they've leaked somebody's personal, that'd be the end of that person's career, But you could do some quite dodgy things with it by manipulating it for your own benefit, which I think is not very nice. And just if I can't be bothered, let's say I can't be bothered to learn someone's quantum mechanics course, so I'm on free ChatGPT because I'm skint and tight and whatever, and I just upload somebody else's IP into the free model, and then it goes into be training, and it's probably going to be pretty good because the humans made it and they cared and it was expensive. And that gets sucked into the machine. I mean, we used to think that artists were hard done by. So, that picture looks a bit like Andy Warhol. If he was still alive, he'd be quite annoyed about that because they ripped off his artwork. And we just used to think it was, artists. And then there was musicians when we got AI music. And then we've suddenly realised actually every single person with a pulse that's ever lived is now being ripped off by this thing, and that's not acceptable at all.
Should we be worried about that ethically? The fact that it is just taking all the content that's already produced and putting it out as if it's its own?
Absolutely. So, the next thing is, all the bosses are going, well, we'll replace our workers and we'll keep the shareholders happy because, we've got to have our share price going up. And then there's this idea of, well, we'll have universal income. And then the really profitable AI companies can share their money and give it to the people who are living under a railway bridge in cardboard boxes. And then everybody will be happy. So it's going to create a massive underclass. When we see like Mythos, for instance, being taken away from us, only certain governments can use it and whatever, there's going to be an us and them element. Like some people are going around in a Citroen C1 and some people are going around in a Bugatti. There's going to be massive. It's going to increase wealth inequality a lot because you're not going to have as good access to good models. But then again, smaller models could help you come up with that thing, creating posters of the Scottish countryside that happens to take off or whatever it is. It could help you make handcrafted things better and market them better. So it could create opportunities, but I think it's going to be the best people are going to have the best models. Countries are going to get further ahead than other countries, and everybody else sinks to the bottom. Which didn't really include wealth disparity in your. I sound like Gary Stevenson there, don't I? But we could see where it's going. If you've got the best, quickest, most perfect models, and everybody else has got a rubber band, then it's not going to end well.
All right, I thought it might be interesting to share with you a few of the ways that I use AI. Let you critique it almost, and I'm prepared for this. I'm prepared for that. I think I'm prepared for this. So you kind of touched on it earlier about the content creation side, and I do use it to help me with that. But I'll tell you kind of how I do it. So an email might be a good example, or a Facebook post. I will generally write it out, and then I'll put it into ChatGPT, and I will ask it, "Do you know what the goal of this email is?" And I find that works really well because if it doesn't, then obviously there's a flaw in the email somewhere. And if it does, then great. And then I'll ask it, we alluded to before, to critique it. Tell me what you would change about this and why. And then kind of go from there. So what are your thoughts on me using it like that?
I think those two are really good because you're saving your attention for the bits that add the most value. The people, the secret terriness about it is still preserved, and you're still looking at it and not just waving it through. I think that's pretty. And it gives you a fresh perspective. There's only so many times you can explain, something, and not this again. It's like magazines. You think a beginner's guide to carp fishing. You think, we had that last January. But, you've got to keep coming up with these new ways of doing things. And I think that's it. It stops you falling out of love with your industry with some of those grindy bits that you just have to do. So I don't see a problem with that at all. And you obviously care about what you're putting out. I think that's a good thing. Now, what's your?
I had a suspicion that one would be okay. I'm less certain about the next two.
Bit dicey, is it this one?
Yeah. So the deep research aspect of ChatGPT. So the example I use for this is another podcast I'm starting up called the Yorkshire History Podcast. And I've got to do some deep research on some topics for that. And it's brought back some wonderful stuff. The caveat I'll put in is I make sure that I go back and check all the sources. And it's actually brought me some wonderful other sources. I've gone and explored on different websites and books and stuff like that. But I suppose primarily that deep research aspect on a specific topic that you can do with them.
Yeah. So I would probably say, well, why are you using AI anyway? Why not just use a regular search? Why not go like some of the machine learning academic papers? I could go to the ACM, the American Computer, Foundation, whatever, and I can go and just do a bog standard search. I'll go old school, not back to pen and paper, but just the next bit along. And I don't have to do an AI search. I could just do a normal search, and I'd have a lot more trust in that what's coming back is relevant. When I've gone to YouTube and I've got like 3,000 YouTube videos of people talking about AI from like professors and credible sources and conference proceedings and stuff. So I'm fairly confident it's good stuff. And I'll go and get things from there. And I'll say, well, if you make a point, you've got to cross-reference back to the transcript that it came from so I can go and check it personally. So I know what I put in. And it just kind of stops the scrolling bit where you have to find page 87 and get the little bit that's referenced to it. So I do that quite a lot to check what I've got. So because I've built my own local LLM, I've built my own little database that helps me search the useful things that I found. And that just uses normal search. It's not using AI search. It's just literally looking for one word in a piece of text, like find and replace, and saying, hey, I think this is worth you looking at. So I guess removing the AI as much as possible is a really good idea. It's good for blue sky thinking, but it's not so, like you say, it's not so good for the fact stuff. But it can still help with the heavy lifting of the fact checking. And if it starts to get 3 wrong in a document, maybe if it starts to get quite a lot wrong, maybe just start it again and have another go and say, like, I found these factual errors, you need to try harder. just go and find me 3 examples of something at a time. Don't try and find me 20 because you're gonna be like a giraffe on roller skates. It's not going to end well. Just go and find 3 good ones, and then we'll find another 3 good ones. And like a quiz show, bank good answers as you go, and then you've got something that's worthwhile at the end. You haven't had to check too much, so your eye for detail hasn't been worn down to nothing. Break it into little tasks.
I like that. And the first thing you said was you would ask me why, and it came in my brain straight away, which is just lazy. That's all it is. It's like I can type it in and bugger off for 10 minutes and come back and it's done it for me. There's a lot less, maybe not a lot less work, but it feels, you know what I mean? And I'm being lazy by doing that.
Yeah, you've got to ask yourself, which is more irritating, staring at a blank canvas when you're lost for words, or curating 10,000 words of stuff, of which half of it needs the chop? You've got to pick your poison, really, haven't you? Sometimes, if you don't know anything about the subject, then it might be better off going back to the blank canvas, because then you're learning about the subject. And then when you get some information later on, you can check its provenance and validity a bit more than if you didn't know anything about it. But if I started writing something about, how to remap a diesel car when the AdBlue's gone weird, that whatever it came out with, I've got no idea what's happening there. It's like, sometimes going a bit slower, you might, as a friend of mine, Dino, sort of says, well, sometimes when you go a bit slower, you end up being faster in the end. You have a smoother ride, even though it's a little bit slower. So that's worth bearing in mind.
I love Dino. If Dino said it, it's worth listening to. I'm going to throw one more, because I think this is maybe a little bit different. I use it for a daily challenge. So every day I ask it to challenge me to do something. Now there's some parameters there. So it asks me to score my resistance, score my time for the day, score my, like, where my brain is, how, can I do something public faced? It's like that. And every day it just gives me like a little challenge, and it's giving me challenges like, I want you to put your phone in a different room for an hour today. And then it gives me ones like, I want you to, this is where you came in, Colette. I want you to message someone to come on your podcast that you wouldn't normally message. And I'm like, yes, this is what I want to do. And it's just
it's obviously brilliant. Yeah.
Right. So that was my my fun little daily challenge I do.
Yeah, I think that's nice. There are, like I say, there are some brilliant aspects to it. If you're getting something out of it that's useful, carry on doing it. But why not? I was going to say something else then, and I can't remember what it was. No, sorry, it's gone. It's one of those bits is gone.
No, I appreciate that. It's one that I think is very much a Terry thing, and I enjoy it. It just keeps me my day interesting a little bit. But is there anything else you want to touch back on, or anything else you'd like to share about this?
I've remembered it. So, like you've asked me, we were talking earlier about big data, and one of the things we can do in the UK is we can ask for big companies to give us, through GDPR, we can say, give me my stuff and then delete it. Thank you very much. And there was a couple of academics did a talk in Berlin, and one of the guys wasn't very good at dating. And it had all gone wrong for like 10 years. He had a catalogue of romantic disasters. And of course, all that data was stored. So he said to various companies, please give me everything you know about me. And of course, that was years and years and years and years of very detailed information. So if you did want to look back at yourself and improve yourself, you could download that data, actually use that surveilled data for something good for you. Ask it about your strengths and weaknesses, how you've performed over time, and come up with a plan, which is very accurate, based on you. You give it your goals. It's a fairly small amount of data compared to what they can cope with. You could get some really good results out of that. He got one chap found out the first thing he ever typed in on YouTube, and then 3 days later he had a binge watching day in 2013. And it did all this stuff, which is brilliant. So if you wanted to, that would be a good use of all that horrific data people have got.
I dread to think what I'm going to read. I'll be way too scared to do that. Anything else you want to touch on today, Colette?
I think I'd just say don't be too disheartened with it. It's in, if you look at Dario Amodei of Anthropic, and he's going, there's going to be he didn't actually use the word bloodbath, white collar bloodbath, but journalists did when they reported on him, saying like 50% of jobs are going to be gone. And it's in their interest to make it look really, really powerful and that it can take over the world, even though we all know, sat here in our little chairs, that it can't. Don't let the fear kind of really taint your day and make you feel despondent about the future. There's lots of things we can do. And if you start de-Googling and looking around, there's lots of things you can do to feel better about it. And if you find something that helps you, don't feel ashamed, use it. If you see somebody who is using it because it's not their first language, bite your tongue. Don't have a pop at them. They're using it probably in good faith. So just go with your eyes open and don't miss out, and don't be a lazy slot merchant that needs a punch in the face either. I think that's what I would say.
I think I've never done this on a podcast before where you see it on some of them where they put the clip at the start. I think that would be the clip I'll put at the start. Don't be a lazy slot merchant that needs a punch in the face.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's like internet marketing on steroids in terms of Wild West, isn't it? It's just like, oh, bro, have a word.
All right, cool. Well, big thank you for today. I really enjoyed it. I've definitely got a slightly different take on it now and learned some stuff. So I really appreciate that. Do you want to take a moment to tell people where they can find you that's not going to cause any data problems?
Yeah. So I kind of decided to do AI 15 months ago before it's turned into a toxic fire pit of hell. But there we are. And you can find me at cleverclogsai.com. And there's a couple of things on there that are useful. I've done a big 10,000 word blog post. There's no opt-in or anything about data privacy. So if some of that was interesting, you can look at how you can start protecting yourself and some of my experiences that I had with that to try and make it a bit human and not too nerdy. And I've also got some things called AI transparency packs, which are, if you're honest about using AI and saying what you're doing, I think people will cut you some slack. And if they can sense you're using it and you've not said that you are, like you say, you fall down the cracks in the middle. So I sort of offer some PDFs for different industries so people can say they're using AI responsibly for the good stuff, for the liver transplants, and they're not using it for the slop. And that can help have those, because as a society, we're going to have those conversations. So that's the other thing on there, on the website. There's probably loads of typos on it, and I hate editing it. Editing your own website is probably the worst thing in the universe. But it's there. You can go and have a look.
Well, a big thank you for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks, everybody.
The Instructor Podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.